Ariyana Love. I am a Goodwill Ambassador and independent journalist. I want to ask a question. How many of you know who Julian Assange is? Please raise your hand. Okay. And how many know where he is right now? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Julian. Julian Assange is in the UK, in Belmarsh Prison. It's a maximum security prison for terrorists. He's presently being held without charges, and that violates the Geneva Convention, his human rights, and international law. That is a stain on UK soil. This is being covered up and underreported by the media, who doesn't want the public to know that Julian Assange is being tortured on UK soil in Belmarsh Prison. He's in a 2-meter by 3.4-meter cell, 22 to 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, folks. That is torture. He's also enduring enhanced interrogation by the UK government, the CIA, and the FBI. How many of you know how this happened to Julian Assange? Raise your hands. Anybody? Okay. Well, I'll give you the backstory because not enough people raised their hands. Most of you know that Julian was in the Ecuadorian embassy for the last 7 years. He entered the embassy in the first place to avoid extradition to the United States, and he turned out to be right. The U.S. was after him. Rafael Correa, who was the president of Ecuador, gave Julian Assange political asylum and Ecuadorian citizenship. There was a shift of power in 2017, and Lenin Moreno became the new president of Ecuador. Well, he betrayed Julian Assange and committed treason by revoking Julian's... Oh, first, wait. He brought in a Spanish security firm into the embassy and put cameras and microphones in every room and spied on Julian Assange against his human rights with his lawyers, even in the woman's bathroom. And guess what, folks? The CIA that Spanish firm allowed the CIA to spy on Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy 24/7 through a live feed. Nothing about this is legal. Then Lenin Moreno, the traitor, revoked Julian Assange's political asylum and his citizenship and allowed British forces to come in and seize him. He was taken immediately to court and then to Belmarsh Prison in the UK. On the same day, Lenin Moreno received an IMF payment of $4.2 billion. So that's how the United States bribed the treasonous Lenin Moreno to give up Julian Assange. So on April 11th, Julian was abducted from the embassy and put into a maximum security prison in the UK, where he remains to this day. But there's more. Belmarsh is known as the Guantanamo Bay of the UK because they're known for torturing their inmates, holding them in solitary confinement for 22 to 23 hours a day, as they're doing to Julian Assange. How many of you heard of the UN torture report? Please raise your hand if you did. Yeah, that's too few people. Well, 6 weeks after being incarcerated in Belmarsh, Julian Assange's health collapsed, and he was taken to the hospital ward of Belmarsh Prison. The UN torture rapporteur, Niels Melzer, brought 2 experts to Belmarsh to visit Julian Assange. And they analyzed him and determined that he's endured prolonged psychological torture, that he shows all the symptoms of someone who suffered prolonged psychological torture at the hands of the most powerful government on earth. He also added in his report, and I recommend everybody read that if you haven't, he added that Julian Assange's life is in danger and that he may die in Belmarsh due to this torture. He's currently being held on remand without charges. Folks, that violates international law. This is a stain on UK soil. Now the United States and the UK are conspiring to extradite Julian Assange to the US, where he faces 175 years of torture. That's a lifetime of torture, and possibly the death penalty. That is against international law. There is nothing legal about what the UK government is doing to Julian Assange. There is nothing legal about extraditing him. It violates the Geneva Convention. You cannot extradite a political prisoner who would face the death penalty potentially. So we have to put a stop to this, folks. Also, Niels Melzer, the UN torture expert, stated that he had to write a second report just to cover the smears, the mainstream media smears against Julian Assange, and there are many, and I'm sure you've seen them. For example, rape allegations. That has been debunked time and time again. All of the smears against Julian Assange have been debunked. None of them are true. These are governments, powerful governments, using our media to lie to you. Corrupt media. Most of the mainstream media, unfortunately, are state agents these days. So I recommend reading the second UN torture report on Julian Assange, written by Niels Melzer. It's titled "Demasking the Torture of Julian Assange." So, what can you do? You can write to your MPs here in the UK. They usually don't respond to people unless there's at least 10 letters. So please get busy doing that. You can talk to everybody you know about this and inform them. Also, you can go on Twitter and follow the hashtag #FreeAssange and follow people who are defending Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Write to your media and tell them to report this.
Well, I'm English, and they're all...
Again, thank you for listening. This is a stain on UK soil. Don't allow the most powerful governments in the world to extradite Julian Assange. Why is this so important? Before I go, why is this so important? Folks, this would be an unprecedented, we are sitting on a precipice. This is an unprecedented move. Julian Assange published truthful information that was in the public's best interest. He published war crimes of the U.S. government in Afghanistan and Iraq. He published war crimes that were classified by the U.S. government under National Security Act. The U.S. government is not allowed to classify, to hide their war crimes under the National Security Act. That is illegal. So Julian exposed this and showed us how corrupt these governments really are. If he were to be extradited, this would be the first time in the history that a journalist, a publisher, is extradited on the Espionage Act. Julian is not a U.S. citizen. WikiLeaks is not a U.S. publishing company. The United States has no right to do this. It is absolutely illegal, and they are trying to slip it under the radar without anybody finding out about it. We cannot let that happen. If Julian Assange is extradited, guess what that means to the rest of us? Journalism will be dead, folks. Free speech will be We cannot allow the U.S. tyrannical government to get away with this. And I'll leave you with this quote. As George Orwell said, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. Stand up for your freedom, folks. Fight this. Resist, UK. You can resist.